We say every day in the Minchas Kriyashma and the blessings before the Shema, God renews every day the act of creation. So the simple understanding means, why does existence exist as it does? Because just as it existed at the first moment, because God said, let it be, whatever it was meant to be, it became. For the past so many thousands of years, God is saying, let it continue. So every moment, he's releasing energies which allows existence to continue. So it's not something he created in the past, and because of what the past, it continues in the present. Every moment, it continues because God continuously wills it that it should exist. But you realize, people change. The only being in existence that walks the face of this earth who has choice is the human being. And if the world was created for a purpose and an objective, if a man misbehaves, that means he's not deserving of certain amenities of life. So if that's the case, God turns off the spigot to a degree. And if you choose tact on an exemplary level, God turns on the spigot. God wills bounty. So based on mankind's behavior, the world either rises or falls. It recedes or advances. As a result of that, not only does God will existence continuously, even how exists in what context existence should exist, it exists in that context because God continuously wills it exist within the context of what? Of reward and punishment. The world is utilizing their existence in the positive. He infuses it with greater energy. The world advances. There's blessing, there's health. There's no disease. There's no illness. There's no pain. But if the world misbehaves, that it creates a destabilizing force because God begins retracting. He's less involved. The less involvement, what is the result of that? Suffering. The world starts regressing. Inflation, hunger, plague, disease, war. People can't live in harmony with one another. Dissension, fractalization of society. So there's an ongoing willing of existence in the context that has to be addressed at that particular moment, literally from moment to moment. And this is all based on good and evil. Now, if you create a die for a certain type of sophisticated piece of equipment, the sophisticated equipment is not made of just one component. It's made up of multiple components, but each component, because of the sophistication of the system, has to be made perfect. But the component by itself, as perfect as it is, it's not functional unless it operates within the context of the other perfect components. So, and that component is meant to interplay with the others to bring about the totality of this piece of equipment, which generates something exceptional. So each detail is perfect, but it's only perfect in its detail. But its perfection is designed to attach to something else which was created with perfection. And you have multiple things together, but they work in sync with one another. The result is even greater. Meaning, we always say the sum total is greater than its parts, because that's the end result of the intention of the one who created this entity, this piece of equipment, this piece of machinery. But it's even more than that. Something initially, at one stage, it's holding at one level of one juncture of completion. But once it incubates that level, it goes to another level. And it goes to another level. Now it's at a point where it could be associated with something else to achieve something else. And there's ongoing interaction and interrelationship with many entities that at one point, they're not ready to connect with something else. Because we're not ready for real time yet. Because it's too premature. It hasn't developed sufficiently. The world itself, of course, is not infinite. It's finite. But it's finite as it is within the context of ourselves. It's unending. Without talking about the purpose and how all these things interplay, how many components exist within existence? And each component, how many multiples of those components? How many herbs? How many fish in the sea? How much water? Fresh water, salt water, gases, different species, the earth, the sand, the luminaries, the sun, the moon, the planets, literally limitless, but of course it's finite. Somehow all this together was created by God. Of course, it's essential to the totality of existence for it to function the way it's supposed to function. But it's not functioning for the now. Initially, when he created those energies, they were meant ultimately to manifest themselves over 6,000 years. That, I don't want to use the term, by hook or by crook, lahavdil. Even though we see it as disaster, ultimately, we're going to end up at the goalpost where God wants us to end up in the way he wants us to end up. So everything is infused with that element to bring about the end result, which is called perfection. I'll give you an example. It's a known fact that necessity is the mother of invention. World War II, the amount of advancement technology-wise, economy-wise, because they had to develop certain things for the war effort to be able to contend with all the issues which were not available for public consumption. And they themselves would have worked on it only because of the seriousness of the moment. The greatest level of brain power and unlimited amounts of money were invested in the war effort, that we should have victory. And they developed things which are not to be believed what we developed. If there wouldn't have ever been a question of the safety of the world, would the atom bomb been created? It was only because of what the world events necessitated certain things to happen. But in the potential of creation, the powers, the energies, the knowledge, you just have to somehow pull it out and coalesce it and develop it and advance it. So everything initially was in the DNA of existence or in the subparticle part of existence. And now all of a sudden it's becoming reality, and it's beyond reality. You have the atomic age, and then you go beyond the atomic age, whatever that is. Different levels of understanding of existence. It was always there. But now that you understand, what do we do with that new understanding? We're able to develop and advance it greater. But that ability to advance it is part of the world purpose to arrive at a certain point, at a certain destination. I always say The level of arrogance in a human being is not to be believed. Every one of us, on a personal level, if you believe in God and you believe God is your benefactor and whatever you have, it's because he gave it to you. Yet the times where we behave in a way where we do it our way, and somehow God, we know, wants something, we just don't pay attention. Could you imagine? You just turn your back? Total disrespect. Right now, I'm going to do what I want. But you know, God doesn't want you to do that. Somehow, we work it out in our minds that we could live with it. I will do what we want. It's the ultimate in arrogance. But that's half of it. In terms of our intellect, the level of intellect we have, it's smaller than the brain of an ant compared to God. He has a pea brain. But yet a person would have the audacity and say to Rabbi, I understand God said we must keep dietary laws. I understand. And I've said this in the past. But Rabbi, could you explain it to me why? And I have difficulty keeping it, although I know God said it, but if I don't understand why, it's difficult to keep it. Because I have to appreciate the reason and the consequences if I don't, and the benefit if I do. Could you explain to me, Rabbi? So I said, and this man speaking to me as a physicist, but he only graduated undergraduate or graduate. He's not at the level to understand the theory of relativity of Einstein. He hasn't made it into, he flunked out of MIT. Could you explain to me what the teaching at MIT and the astrophysics course is, the most advanced? Could you explain it? He says, I don't have that capacity. I only made it through Brooklyn College. I didn't make it into Princeton. They wouldn't even accept my application because they felt I'm not in the elite of the, never belonged to the Mensa Club. Never belonged to that. So they always shunned me. So the rabbi says, and you want to understand, you can't make MIT and you want to understand God's mind. That the level of genius of God, even within a human context, is unfathomable. And you want to understand why God willed dietary laws based on the makeup of the Jewish soul, which we have no understanding, which even the greatest angel can't fathom. The spirituality, the spiritual makeup of the Jewish soul. But you want to understand it. Rabbi, but you realize I could write any check. I could buy and sell this synagogue 29 times over. What does one thing have to do with another? You know, you drive a 20-ton Mack garbage truck, and you could transport enough waste and go with it into the ocean and disappear. And I don't know how to drive a stick shift, only, what's his name? Automatic. So therefore what? What are you boasting about? You talk like a fool. And we do, an arrogant fool. And even have a slight inkling of the super genius, divine genius, which goes beyond anything we could imagine. We should be humbled and submit and accept, embrace everything God wants. Because if he created this world, it was for a purpose. And the purpose was in our best interest, because we believe that. So if we believe it's in our best interest. So when he gave us a prescription of life, a mandate, why don't we believe that's in our best interest also? The average person who's healthy and lives normal life, he believes in God. God created this world because he wants us to be beneficiaries of his creation. So when he gave us his Torah, he wants to deny us. It seems to be totally contradictory. When it comes to the physical, it's our best interest. When it comes to the spiritual, although we don't deny there was Sinai, and he gave it to us, he chose us, there he's putting us in the straitjacket. That's not in our best interest. But people operate on all these various fronts simultaneously, although they're contradictory to one another. We go in 6 directions simultaneously, and they're opposite directions. But you say, well, that's what's enigmatic about a human being. We know things, but we behave as if we don't know them. We act in a way we're respectful, but sometimes we're arrogant. We behave like we have no control over our lives, although we do have control. Moshe Rabbeinu, before he passes away, he says to the Jewish people, when you come to the land of Israel, the promised land, God will give you great wealth, great success. And I'm warning you in advance, there's a certain vulnerability human being has. And he'll say, my own power and my own acumen brought about all the success. You can attribute the success to yourself. And the moment you start believing it's you, you'll forget God. You can leave God way back there to the point he will not resonate in your life. The moment you believe it's you and you start feeling your oats and tasting that success, you better put a cap on it right away. Because if you let that get out of control, there's no God in your life. You become God. What does God want? What I want. But God says different. No, you don't understand. You consult with me, I'll tell you what God wants. That's and he warns the person. And eventually you forget about God. You don't even believe in God eventually. But how did this all come about? Well, if you have the wherewithal, you have the intelligence, and you know the right person, and you have the right connections, it's called luck. You got to be a lucky guy. You got to carry that rabbit foot on your belt and rub it every time before you throw that pitch. Right? The way Yogi Berra used to do it. He rubbed that rabbit's foot. We could look as outsiders. We're on the outside. We're not there. But it's interesting. A person succeeded. Relative success. He believes it's him. He meets a well-weathered, very wealthy person. And this man he could drown in this other man's wealth. And the man says to him, Sonny, I want to explain you something. Don't be an arrogant little son of a gun. Why don't you behave yourself and wake up? When he hears that reprimand from this very wealthy person, all of a sudden, he knows he can't open his mouth because he can't hold up a candle to this man's success. You're attributing everything you have to yourself. Now, many years ago, when we grew up, a Schwinn bike was the ultimate bike that was manufactured in the United States. Now, to be able to afford to buy a Schwinn, your parents had to have wealth. But there was another way you were able to have a Schwinn bike. There used to be an icicle. It was called popsicle, a creamsicle. It was ices with ice cream together. And if you saved enough of those sticks and you would mail them in, you were able to get a Schwinn bike. The kids, most people, they finish it. They throw it in the waste bin in those days. You found them on the street. And there were kids, even though it wasn't a question, it was a question of health. Kids would collect them. They wanted that Schwinn bike so badly. And they collected enough of these sticks to get a Schwinn bike. The guy rides the bike. He thinks he's king of the hilt. He's riding a Schwinn bike. You know? But he's a child. He's immature. And his parents, they smile. It's cute. This man made a few dollars. He has a few dollars in his pocket. And he boasts. And he puts forth his opinion. And he acts arrogantly. What this other man makes in a day, you won't make in a lifetime. And you're arrogant. So if he gets the reprimand from that other person, maybe he'll be put in his place. Maybe. It may be just temporarily, because the moment he's out of the purview of this other person, he's back to his arrogance, because he thrives on that. Because that's empowerment, and everybody wants to have empowerment. We find the Navi, this we read on Tisha B'Av. A wise man should not pride himself in his wisdom. A rich man should not pride himself in his wealth. A rich man. What should you pride yourself? In knowing me. Not in your wisdom, not in your strength, not in your wealth. You should pride yourself that you know me. Why? Because everything in life is predestined. If you're strong, if you're going to be wealthy, and if you're going to be wise. But free choice, that's you. So that you chose to recognize the truth, despite all the reasons not to, that you have a right to be proud. Because that's you. Everything else is not you. As they used to say, you're lucky your father was born before you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be who you are today. You're only sitting in that chair because your father was born before you. But yet, the child, the son, acts arrogantly. What does that have to do with you? Nothing to do with you. You were lucky you were born, but to this parent who had wealth, who put you in the driver's seat. But again, it's recognition. If you look at existence, it's the word unfathomable is an understatement. And we're talking about a person, you don't believe in God, there's nothing to talk about. But a person does believe in God, and you believe God is the creator, and he created this world, which has a level of, there's no word to describe what it is. And the interaction now and the manifestation of what it's meant to bring about. In advance going into the future, thousands of years, how things are going to develop and manifest themselves and evolve. No, it's interesting. People believe in evolution. So people believe in evolution. They say the one cell animal was created by God. They say, but the process was evolution. It's not he created a full world. He created that one, the amoeba, and from that, everything developed. Let's say that's true, which is not true. It's contrary to Jewish belief. But let's say that you accept that. That means whoever this being was created this one cell animal. That means within that one cell, all existence came about from that, all life. The humans, the animals, every type of species. What level of genius went into that one cell? What level of DNA was in that one cell? That itself speaks for itself. So who is this creator? That means he understood how things are going to evolve. It's not just randomly they evolved that way, it evolved. So if you believe that he has that level of genius, that level of ability, he doesn't have the ability to create a whole world. It's unacceptable to say differently. Well, the way I understand it, it seems to be the way you understand. What do you understand? What do I understand? What does anybody understand? We only understand what God gave us the ability to understand. We were lucky. At Sinai, God revealed every secret of existence when we became his people. Moshe Rabbeinu was privy to everything. And he shared much of it with the Jewish people, and God revealed it to the Jewish people at Sinai. So many are the fundamental understanding of everything is only because God shared it with us. And we were touched with it. We had a capacity to understand it. And this is continuously, this part of the transmission of Torah. That's part of the oral law. Everything's contained in the Torah. We read in Pirkei Avos, Hafach bo, hafach bo, techula bo. As much as you delve in Torah, you always come upon new horizons. Because all existence, whether it's medicine, whether it's science, whether it's whatever it may be, everything is contained within Torah, because Torah is the blueprint for everything. Therefore, if you know how to decipher the Torah itself, you understand all the inner workings of the celestial, the terrestrial, and why everything comes together. And Moshe Rabbeinu understood this. But Tzalel understood it. The architect of Mishkan, because he was endowed by God with that knowledge to be able to create a microcosm which corresponds to all existence, and how to infuse it with the various energies that it should function and have the same effect. This is what the Ramchal is explaining. So getting back to what I spoke about the other day, we say Gamzul Latova. When we say Gamzul, it's for the best. And truly, for the moment it's for the best, we understand it. It's with such a limited understanding. Ultimately, for the best is in its totality of existence, it's for the best. This had to happen now because you had to see this now as you saw it for the best, because that's part of the future. You knowing that you're part of the equation for the future. That's even on the limited level. As a speck, you understand it. It's for the best, but that's not really. Because knowing that, it gives you an insight and an inspiration to be able to advance and affect other things. So every detail, as much as you understand it clear and absolute, but its innate value versus the total picture, it's not fathomable. Only God knows the total picture. And only at the end of time, in retrospect, will God reveal to us why everything had to happen the way it happened, because only the totality of existence could only arrive at its final moment if everything preceded it happened the way it did. A person is a tobacco farmer, or a person is a wine grower. He has vineyards. It's known fact, the quality of wine is based on the soil. That's what it's based on. What it's composed of. And that will determine the type of grape that will grow from that soil. And that will determine, but you have to be a winemaker to know exactly how to maximize on that location. How to irrigate it, how to tend to those grapes, and eventually, and how to press them, how to ferment them, and how they should ferment in a certain way. Then you have that exceptional quality wine, and it ages over the years to be something out of the ordinary, one of a kind. But when the winemaker, when he, besides pressing the grapes and fermenting them, when he had to fertilize that soil or work that soil, and he planted that vine, at first there had to be a certain quality vine. It couldn't be just an ordinary vine. It had to be a certain kind of vine. There were so many elements which went in to ultimately bring about the final product. That means each one in its own right was something which had a certain characteristic which contributed to ultimately the finest vintage of wine. I was going to speak about tobacco. People are, they used to have these smoking clubs, smoke cigars, the humidor clubs. They sit in their smoking jacket, they blow rings, and they think, they're pontificating about the future of existence. It has a certain taste, a certain aroma. The tobacco is tended, it was known. Cuban cigars were the best cigars. If you know what cigars are, I don't, but that's what they said. The soil where they grew that tobacco, the ones who rolled those leaves to make them, it was aged, it was dry, ultimate cigar. So when they knew, when you put all this together, you smoke that cigar, you're willing to violate American law to import illegal cigars. You buy black market those cigars. That's how important it is. Being facetious. But again, why is it so special? How much went in? How much previous planning went in to create that special cigar? Lahavdil elf havdolos. Everything in existence, everything is created perfect in the most minute detail, because in conjunction with infinite numbers of other things together, the end result is perfection. And anything less than that, you cannot have perfection. What do we need? So many variables, so many components that it borders on the infinite. You know what the answer is? If you know who God is, then you'll understand it. But until then, you have no understanding. It's impossible to know. See you.
Alexa, set timer for 8